Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. We are live on Al Jazeera and YouTube. Today, changing the way society looks at people with disabilities. We'll look at a viral hashtag that's challenging misconceptions of disability, dating, and body image.
Hi, my name is Andrew Gerza, and I am a disability awareness consultant and the creator of the Disabled People Are Hot hashtag, and you are in the stream.
Body-positive hashtags like disabled people are hot and hot person in a wheelchair are being shared on social media to highlight an aspect of people with disabilities that isn't represented in popular culture: disabled and sexy. This is what disability awareness consultant Andrew Gerza, who you just saw, had to say about the hashtag he created.
Honestly, I was on Twitter and I just typed in disabled people are hot, and I got the notification that this hashtag has never been used before. And I thought, wow, there's something I can do with this. So I ran with it, and I did a really quick tweet saying, if you're disabled and you have a picture of yourself that makes you feel good, sexy, happy, that you're proud of as a disabled person, post it here using the hashtag. And I didn't think anything of it because, Twitter can be so fickle and things don't always go viral. So I put it out there and didn't think anything of it. And I went to bed about an hour later, and the next morning my Twitter was blowing up with mentions with the hashtag being used. I think that disabled people just wanted another outlet to express themselves. I think that all of this stuff was happening before my hashtag, and my hashtag was certainly not the creation of like sex and disability, of course not, but it gave us an outlet to do that, and it gave us permission to say, yeah, I do feel sexy today, I do feel sensual today, I do feel really good about myself today as a disabled person, and I'm gonna put a picture of that. And I think it's amazing to me that it's gone so far all over the world. Taboo around people, the word hot and disabled going together, is we've been taught historically that disabled people are to be considered infantile, to be considered like children, to be considered non-sexual or asexual, and we're afraid that by making them sexualized, they're too much like the rest of everybody else. We're afraid to admit that somebody who has a bodily difference or who has a disability could be considered sexy. That scares us as a society because one day disability is gonna affect all of us, and that's really what scares us. So to think that something that is considered wrong is sexy scares a lot of us.
Here to talk more about these issues on set, Lawrence Carter-Long, Director of Communications for the Disability Rights Education and Defence Fund. He's based in Berkeley, California. In Essex in the UK, Anne Rafula Strike. She is a Paralympic wheelchair racer and disability rights activist. And in Monterrey, Mexico, Maria Angel Garcia Ramos, a disability and diversity activist. She's also the founder of the non-profit Mexican Women with Disabilities. Guess it is so good to have you here. So much to talk about. Let me start here with Mummy Goth. Mummy Goth says, this hashtag is really fun, made me smile. I think it does raise the issue in a non-contentious way. The issue, Lawrence, is what for you?
Well, I think the issue for me, what this illustrates, what Andrew's story illustrates, is that disabled people aren't asking for anybody's permission anymore. We're owning it, we're claiming it, we're putting it out there into the world. For most of human history, disability was just a diagnosis. That's all you got.
Yeah.
What Andrew's story, and I think what the popularity of these hashtags illustrates, is that if you ask disabled people what the word means to them, you're gonna get a variety of responses. You're gonna get history, you're gonna get community, you're gonna get constituency, you're gonna get identity, and you're gonna get sexy. And I think that really shows how far we've come and how far we're coming in society and how those changes are being made and that people are claiming it for themselves.
Anne, go ahead.
You know what, first and foremost, we have to identify that actually disability is not a problem. It's not a shortcoming. And people with disabilities are just so tired of being put in a box and labeled, Oh, disability people don't have feelings, disability people don't do this and that. And I think we've reached a time where we want to come out of that box, out of the cocoon and sort of just be ourselves, express who we are. And also, let me say that I think it goes just beyond the hashtag. It doesn't end there because we are not just about the hashtag. We are more than that. But the hashtag has created a very good conversation. Actually, I accepted the challenge.
Oh, okay. All right, let me just see. What do I have here? We have a very good-looking bunch of guests here. The only time I will ever say to stream guests, guess you look hot. So, let me just see what I have here. This is a beautiful picture. Anne, tell us about this picture and what was behind it.
Do you know, when you look at this picture, what do you see? Do you just see a racing chair? Hey, look at that body. Look at my muscles. Look at my hair. You know, you see a representation of someone who loves herself, and that's who I am. I love myself. I've never actually let my disability hold me back or prevent me from enjoying life, doing the things that any other woman would like to do.
I'm just thinking about what you do, Marianne Hell, which is help people who have disabilities. You take pictures of them. You make them feel powerful. Yeah. Why do you do that? How does that help?
I do think it's about our identity. Disability, I think, doesn't define us, but it's definitely a part of our identity. It's the same as me saying that I am Mexican. Probably being Mexican doesn't particularly define everything that I am, but it's a very important part of who I am. So, and I also think it's valid for people to, we have to understand that everybody has a different process. And if you
have a disability, you can be really proud of your disability, and on the other way, you could be hurting and not happy with having a disability. But one thing that I do think it's important is that we all want to belong. We all want to feel that we can be ourselves, and we want to discover ourselves. So taking a picture of who you are and labeling yourself or tagging yourself as hot, it's empowering. You could also be tagged as any other adjective you want, because we could be anything we want. And saying yourself that you are hot and you identify yourself as a hot person, it means that it goes to the line of self-love and actually acknowledging everything that you are. So it's very powerful.
And I really like what Marianne you're saying, because it's not just about the outside, or the outward appearance, the outward look. Empowerment must come from within. So when you're feeling good about yourself from the inside, you are so able to express it on the outside. And you look at yourself, you look at your reflection in the mirror, and you look at this beautiful, gorgeous person. And it's not just the outward, it comes from inside. And to me, that is empowerment.
The most important part of this, I think, is one, people get to, when they see the pictures, and they see the hashtag, disabled people are hot. One, they can maybe see themselves in that picture somewhere. They can start to think of themselves a little differently in a way that they've never had the opportunity to do before. I'll be 52 years old this year. I did not get involved in disability community until I was about 35. Other people shouldn't have to wait that long.
Sure.
What we're starting to see with people claiming it themselves, putting it out there for themselves is, there's a saying that says nothing about us without us, that the disability community is kind of adopted. Other social justice movements have used it. What we're starting to see now is an updated version of that, which basically says nothing without us, period, right? So it could be jobs, it could be employment, it could be education, but we're also saying we're claiming our rights and our stake to be a part of everything that you folks, non-disabled folks, take for granted. And I think that's the real power of these campaigns.
I'm going to show, before I go to another comment, and hold tight for a moment, I have to show everybody the way that I got to know Lawrence, which was as a dancer. Yes, I did say dancer. That's right. All right. Explain as we look at your young, hot self here.
So just not so young. So
I was impressed.
I had more hair.
No, that is hot. That's a hot picture.
Thank you. Well, people just like thinking disability and the word hot don't go together. They didn't think disability and the word dance go together either. Right. So a little over a decade ago, I was involved with a project with a choreographer in New York City, Heidi Latsky. We called the show GIMP because we knew that I walked a little differently. We know people with disabilities know who they are and what their situations are. This was a troupe of people who are disabled and non-disabled. We toured the world. We opened the Dublin Dance Festival. We went to Kathmandu. We did Lincoln, Nebraska. We were all over the place.
Really challenged people's perceptions
that
of
was
what
the whole
people
point.
who are disabled can do And dance is
Well,
one of
there's
them.
this one notion, right, that says, well, anybody can dance. Well, that's true. Anybody can dance in their living room. Anybody can sing in the shower. Not everybody, though, is going to be an on-stage performer. Not everybody is going to have people paid to see that performance.
Sure.
So we had to be better than good, right?
Yeah.
We had all these assumptions about, oh, that's so nice, that's so sweet, that's so
You look
inspirational,
intense here.
right? And that's the thing. You got to bring that intensity to it themselves, and that intensity itself, right? That passion, that power, that's something disabled people know. We hang out, we talk to each other, we sort of bring that every day. This is a glimpse of our world that the non-disabled communities haven't seen before, and they're just starting to get the memo.
I have to introduce guest Tom Shakespeare into this conversation. Tom Shakespeare is a very famous professor of disability research. He wants to bust a few misconceptions that non-disabled people have about disabled people. Here he is.
Biggest myth that disabled people face is the myth of asexuality. It's thought in the media and in just ordinary life that we're not interested in sex, that we don't need sex education, that we don't have babies, that we don't have sex. It's a myth. It's not true. The evidence shows that in Britain and around the world, people with disabilities have sex. So bury the myth of asexuality, please.
Our guests are smiling. We will approach this carefully. Mother of one, Anne. How do you respond to what Tom was saying there?
Let me just tell you something. You know, I really like what he's saying. I remember when I was pregnant, you know, I was once, you know, sort of like wailing myself in the street, and I saw these women looking at me with some really weird eyes, and one of them whispered to the other, "Who is that horrible man who did this to this woman?" And, you know, I looked at them and I was like, "Oh, are you talking about my, you know, my bum, you know?" And I was like, "No, actually, for someone to have a baby, you have sex. And I mean, sex is between a man and a woman, if you're having to conceive a baby. And it was in the natural way. And this just shows that actually when we talk about sexuality and attractiveness and beauty, these are three different things, because you know, when you can be attracted to people in a different way, you don't get attracted to someone just because they're disabled or because they're just a size 0 or because they're blonde or what. I think there's more that it makes someone attractive. And in my case, I think for me to really go ahead and find a man, you know, endowed with a man and have a baby, that was a miracle to some people. But I look at it and I'm like, no, I am a woman, and it happens because disability does not take that away from you.
It's about as natural as anything can get, right? You can't get much more natural than that. I mean, you just had Tom Shakespeare on. One of his compatriots, Penny Pepper in the UK, talks about if you can't imagine people with disabilities engaged in sexual activity, having sex, being sexy, that says more about your lack of imagination than it says about people with disabilities.
And am I right in thinking that Penny Pepper writes fiction?
Erotica.
Erotica.
She writes erotica.
All right. With
exactly.
people with disabilities
People
in
with
it.
disabilities in it too. That's
All right. This is interesting.
Puts the porn in inspiration porn, if you want to consider it.
All right. Thank you, Lawrence.
Okay.
Blushing here.
But you know, let me also just say that actually
Yeah.
attraction is between two people. And it could be between two people who are, you know, who both have a disability. It could be between someone with a disability and someone without a disability. So we need to kill all these misconceptions that disabled people don't have sex, or disabled people are only attracted to other disabled people, or, you know, we need to kill all that.
Let me ask you one very personal question, if I may. Your hubby, is he disabled or non-disabled?
The father of my child is not disabled. He doesn't have a disability. And, you know, I tell you, you know, I've always said this funny story that when I was growing up in Africa, being a woman with a disability, I was a third-class citizen, you know, double jeopardy. I'm not just a woman, you know, but woman with a disability. Oh, my goodness me, that was so bad. Who would want to get married to a disabled woman? I couldn't go to the river. I couldn't fetch firewood. I couldn't look after my husband. I couldn't bear kids. That is what society...
You were written off as a Kenyan with disabilities. You had no future.
I was completely written off. And I tell you what, there were men who were attracted to me. And as soon as they would sort of like try to get a little bit serious, their families would discourage them. Why? Because this was just something that they didn't understand. How can you bring a woman with a disability in our home or into our family?
Let me put this to you, Marianne Hell. This is from Holly Greeder on Twitter. She says, it is unbelievable that in 2019, we still believe that disability is the end of the world, that we as disabled people are not worthy of basic human emotions and needs. We are still believed to be so different to an able person, which is untrue. And now I'm going to just click on a picture of you with your man looking very happy.
Yes.
How does this resonate with you? Yeah, go ahead. I mean, it always feels like today we're stating the obvious, but it's not obvious for many people, Marianne Hell. So how would you actually extrapolate a little bit more for us?
I do think that's a great tweet, by the way. I do think that we've been talking about disability, and I think there are like two lines, and the main issue about this is that the first one are the narratives about disability. And the way we think about disability, it mostly comes from media and pop culture. If we don't have the education or the context or positive context about our identities in where we live or with who we live or the experiences that we have, then we absorb everything from media and pop culture. So if media tells me that an acceptable body looks like some way, not disabled, or if media tells me that we're always the sidekick and never the leading ladies of the movie and we cannot fall in love, and in Mexico, telenovelas tell us that, you know, the bad guys at the end up having a disability, like if it's some kind of curse. So that's the first narrative that we have on our minds when even us as you know, the person who has a disability believes that. And I remember when I was young, actually believing when I was 15 that I would never have a boyfriend because who would want to be with a girl who could not dance, who was in a wheelchair? And there's this narrative that we believe. And now I've been having, like, through my life relationships, and now I have a relationship, and I do think it's something that it hurts people, but those narratives mostly come from able people, right? And the second part is our idea of sex. What is sex?
Yeah.
We can say that sex is, for some people, sex is a man and a woman. And for some people, it could be a woman and a woman, or a man and a man. And the different ways that we have sex is like the different ways people eat a taco. We always talk about that. Me and my friends always joke about which way do you hold a taco? Like, everybody has a different way of doing their thing. So sex is not like a constricted idea particularly. And sometimes we believe that. So if we think that sex is only meant for able people who can stand and do certain positions, then obviously you're going to be thinking, if you have certain limitations, you're going to be thinking that you're not going to be able, and that is not something that was meant for you. But that's not true. That's another narrative that we believe.
Because we exist in a world and in different cultures that weren't built with us in mind, disabled people are masters of innovation. We're really good at improv. Our daily lives are like jazz. We have to just figure it out as we go along.
I like
that. And
And
so, you know, if you're playing some Coltrane, some magic is going to happen. That's what goes down, right? And the same is true when it comes to our intimate relationships. I think part of the lesson here, if we're speaking particularly to non-disabled people and disabled people alike who maybe have never been introduced to it before, is you've got to release those expectations, right? You've got to liberate yourself from those closed-minded notions. You've got to expand the possibilities of what your life and what those opportunities can be. Now, there are two different ways to do that, right? One, you're a disabled person, get to know other disabled people. They can show you the ropes. They've been there longer. They've been doing it. That's very important. Like I said, I was 35 before I did that. I've had cerebral palsy my entire life. The other thing is be there for somebody else, right? If you got a foot in the door, if you got an opportunity, if you got a way in, open that door, invite other people in, right? Be that mentor, be that support for somebody else. The thing people need to understand, and this is everybody, right? But particularly non-disabled people. In the United States, 80% of those who are disabled become disabled later in life. Not everybody is as lucky as I am to be born with a disability, right? And so what we've got to do is find ways in for those people. Don't wait till it directly affects you, right? Till your son is born with autism or daughter born with Down syndrome, or till your cousin comes back from Iraq or Afghanistan missing a limb.
Lawrence, I have to show you this because this speaks to exactly the point you're making. Craig Haynes is watching right now on YouTube. I can't wait to watch this story. I've been in a chair for 11 years. I woke up one day paralyzed from the chest down, I have GBS, CIDP. So not entire life of disability, but at one point, then you became part of the 15%.
That's
15%
right.
in the world.
And if you're lucky
are
enough,
disabled.
right, most of us age into disability, right? At some point, the hearing's not as good as it used to be,
Yeah.
the eyesight starts to go, the hips are a little wonky.
Yeah.
So what that forces you to do is get creative, right? So you can start now.
Do you know what I
wait.
say?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what I say? Disability does not come with a manual. It doesn't come with a manual. And I like what Lawrence is saying.
Yeah.
We are so innovative. When a disability knocks or when you acquire disability, whether you are born with it or later in life, you just have to go on with life. I've always said to people that sometimes you either sink or rise, you know. But also, let us not forget about all those disabled people who are not actually consenting to sex, but they're being abused or they're being taken
It's
advantage of.
a whole new angle, yes. We need a show
Yes.
for that.
Right.
And we need a show for that. And I think that is something that really, really angers me. You know, this is a group of the disabled people who've been forgotten. We are here, we can speak for ourselves because we know what to do. We you know, you can sort of have an affair or a, you know, like you can go out with anybody that you want.
Do you know, Anne, Robert Colts is watching you right now, and he says on YouTube, people without disability often tell us with disabilities how to do things instead of listening to us first. We usually know best how to cope with our individual situation. That goes not just for this personal, intimate conversation we're having, but in the way that you actually run your entire lives. There's something that I want to, just something, if I may, if I just squeeze it in from the University of Sheffield, have a listen to Christy Lydiard, because she's part of that force that's trying to change people's hearts and minds. Have a listen.
I'm now working on a project called Living Life to the Fullest with disabled young people who are readily talking to us in their interviews about sexuality and inclusion, how they want better sex education, they want space to talk about intimacy, sex and love, and support to do so. They don't want to feel shame around sexuality that they're often made to feel. They don't want to be defined by unhelpful media representations that position disabled people as largely asexual or undesirable. And ultimately, they just want support and acknowledgement of their sexualities from others and those around them.
Marianne Hill, you're trying to change the way people see people with disabilities. How do we do that?
I do think it's very important. One of the things that we have to understand is that there is not a single disability story. And it's something that we have to get into our minds, because I could say that even though I'm a Mexican woman who has a disability, who is a minority, who has everything, I'm more exposed to being a victim of sexual abuse in life, I still have privilege because I have the opportunity to be here. I have studied college. Like, it's very different. So we have to understand that we all have different visions of our disabilities and different stories.
Sure.
And if we have that in mind, it's easier for us to understand why is it so important to tell our stories.
I cannot believe we're almost.
The other day
we're almost at the end of this show, Marianne Hill. So I'm going to ask you just to tell us that story in 30 seconds, if you can. Go ahead.
Okay, I was talking to a friend who has a disability, a girl, and she cannot move her arms, and we were talking about sex and talking about how is it for me that I can actually move my arms, but how is it for her that she can't? And I was telling her, like, you have to tell this story. You have to talk about this, because the power that the hashtag had was not the particular adjective of being hot. Sure. It was the thing that it made people belong, like everybody, and they could belong to another story that was similar to them. So I do think that this is what we need to start doing, telling our stories and being in more platforms and fighting for this representation of our stories and making a community through them.
All right, just going back to social just for a moment. Dr. Rita Powell, such a great campaign, and yes, they are hot. Compliment to the guests. We are never going to say hot guests ever again. Derek M. It's hard for me to blush. I'm blushing a little bit today. I don't see why disabled people wouldn't be attractive. People are people. It seems like you are resonating with our audience. In a sentence, Lawrence, wrap us up.
We're all better off when we have a diverse group of people together in the same room, in the same world, in the same community, sharing their experiences and learning from each other. The bottom line, I got to go back to it once again. It's not nothing about us without us. It's nothing without us, period. If you're not involving disabled people, you're missing out.
Hot Lawrence, hot Anne, hot Marianne Hill, thank you so much for bringing your hotness to the stream today. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.